So if anyone hasn't noticed, we have burritos for anyone who would like a burrito. The burritos today are sponsored by Corona. So we have Charles here from Corona. So big thanks to Corona for sponsoring some food today. And so first thing today, we're going to have Charles give a little intro about Corona and talk about like why it's great to use. And then we're going to have Stephen give his talk about using or monetizing your app with ads, and he's going to talk about the fall of iAd and other products that exist that are good for if you want to make money from your app. And then after that, we're going to have time for networking and all that fun stuff. So we'll start off with Charles.
All right, well, thanks very much, David and crew, for putting together this event. This is by far one of the best groups that I've been in Austin. I've been here about a year and a half, and I've attended this meeting on and off. And by far the best information, the best discussions, the best everything. So thanks, guys, for putting it together. I'm Charles McKeever. I am the Director of Publisher Relations at Corona Labs. And Corona Labs, how many people here have used Corona SDK? Anybody? One, two, okay, a couple people. So I don't want to turn this into a commercial. I just want to give you guys some of the highlights so that you can get a sense of what Corona can do for you as iOS developers, right? Because this is the iPhone meetup, and you need to know how that applies to you. So Corona SDK is a cross-platform development kit that lets you build apps for iOS, Android, Apple TV, Android TV, Mac, Windows desktop devices, Kindle, things like that. So everything is built using Lua, which is a very easy scripting language. You can pick it up in about 10 minutes. It's used for World of Warcraft. It's used for set-top boxes. It's used in a variety of different ways that you probably don't even know. Most people, when we go to conferences, they're either like, that, I've never heard of Lua, or they're like, oh yeah, it's about a 50-50 split. But it's really easy to pick up and use. So as iOS developers, how that applies to you is that you can target iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, all that stuff that you can already do today. The other thing that you can do, though, is that for the same amount of effort, you can also target additional platforms like Android, things like that, all those things that I mentioned before. Why you might want to do that is a variety of reasons. One, it's really hard to get into the Apple App Store, and you might want to speed up your development testing cycle by targeting Android platform first, and then getting some feedback from users, and then rolling that into your iOS projects, and then finally making that push through the Apple Store once you're ready to go. It's a lot easier to get things published on Android than it is on iOS. I wish the Apple Store was a little easier to navigate. But and the other thing that you get is if you were to build your app, let's say you built your app in Corona and then targeted iOS, is that when you go in, because everything's built in Lua, when you go in and you build your app for the device, you just pick the platform that you want to target. So you go in and you say, I want to build for Windows Phone, I want to build for Kindle, I want to build for Apple TV. And by doing that, let's say that you put you already built your app for iOS and you're ready to go, but hey, while you're there, go ahead and build it for Android. Go ahead and build it for Kindle. Go ahead and stick it in these other stores, because invariably what we see is that somebody has an Android device in their family, but somebody else has an iOS device, or somebody at work has one or the other, right? And it's just a cross-pollination. It's a way to kind of increase your exposure, and it's kind of think of it as a marketing tool as well. So I don't want to do a demo necessarily tonight. I want to leave time for our talk. I will show a demo later if people are interested and want to see the tool in action. But I want to leave lots of time for monetization and stuff like that.
Mine's only probably 5 to 10 minutes long.
Oh, yeah? You want me to do a demo, is that what you're saying?
I'll go for it.
How do you connect here? What's the easiest way to do it?
The Capital Factory Wi-Fi is the first thing you have to do is connect to that, and not the guest one.
Not the guest one? Okay, I think I'm already connected to that. Yep. And then we're just air sharing to the classroom or something?
Yes, classroom.
Air sharing to the classroom.
You said it supports Apple TV or Android TV. Is that?
Yeah, so, it's one of those things that's not highly publicized, not like Apple TV, but, your Kindle Fire devices, your sticks, your things like that you can, there's a stick, there's a box just almost like,
It's like a Nexus box or something. Or
basically,
Nexus something.
yeah, it's basically an Android device, hooks to your TV, and you get your Google Play and all your other stuff through it, right, so.
And that's
So is that the Chromecast thing?
Well, no, that's, no.
No? Okay.
No.
Yeah, Google's had a lot of ventures into the TV,
Right.
TV stuff, and Android TV and Chromecast are kind
Are we-
of.
oh,
Yeah, there was like a Nexus TV that, from what I looked at, had like the most like interactiveness, like most like ability to be like an Apple TV app. But I think when I tried to find out more about it, they had like just taken it off the store, like their e-commerce store from Google. So
I think some TV vendors are actually using Android TV as their base OS within the TV as well.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I was looking at a Sony, and it was Android TV.
One of the interesting things about Android in general is, and again, this isn't an Android group, but it's important to understand the value, is that if you were gonna turn around and take your app and build it for Android, you'd have to go over and, do Java and all the tooling that goes along with it. And then there's always differences between versions of Android, differences between devices and stuff like that. And one of the things that we try to do with Corona is abstract all of that. So even if I were an Android developer specifically, I would encourage other Android developers to use it because it abstracts all those variations between the different versions of Android. So when you go to use the API, you're just using one API and you're not having to account for all those different edge cases because we've already handled all of that behind the scenes. And so although I'd say a large percentage of people who use Corona use it for iOS, the people who use it for Android are getting a great amount of value out of that just because it handles all that stuff behind the scenes. So here it is, coronalabs.com. If you go there, you can download the SDK. It comes with samples, which are just sort of very narrowly focused snippets to show you how to use the physics engine, how to get maps, how to work with video, how to do all the things that you'd want to do right kind of out of the box. Then we also have guides, documentation, we have videos, we have sample apps, and as you can see there, it says a Perk company. We were purchased by Perk, which is an Austin-based company, which is actually, I don't know which direction it is, but it's right across the street, and so I didn't have very far to come tonight. And one of the things that they have is monetization, and they have a whole platform that they built up on their own with an SDK just for monetization in apps. So even if you don't want to use Corona, go check out Perk. They have an SDK. You can put it in your iOS projects, that sort of thing. So one of the things we've been doing here lately with Corona is pushing out a bunch of new plugins, and a lot of those have been monetization plugins. So for AppLovin, Facebook Audience Network. Drawing a blank at the moment, but several others, and more on the way. And we're getting ready. We're in beta, but we're going to be pushing out our own Corona ads. Which our goal there, everything at Corona is our goal is to make it as easy as possible to develop an app, a game, an interactive book, what have you. And it's all about the speed of development. So when you look at Corona, so here's the debugger, the console rather, and then the simulator. So over here on the left, we've got a very simple example of that is our classic physics demonstration. And one of the interesting things about it is that if you brought up the code, which I have here on the side here, just move this out of my way. If you bring up the code, it's only 10 lines of code. So one of the things Corona does is it builds in Box 2D. And so there's a whole physics engine built into it, so you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So in this example, if I were to just simply save the file, not making any changes whatsoever, the simulator automatically refreshes. So you don't have to wait for the simulator to boot up, you don't have to wait for it to build, you don't have to load it onto the device, you can iterate really quickly, which is, again, one of the great things, even compared to popping up your project in Xcode. You get that sort of interactivity. So if I wanted to, I could adjust the rotation of the box. So right now the box, every time I hit refresh, or hit save rather, every time I hit save, the box acts the exact same way. So if I change that to something different, when the box hits, it's gonna react differently. So you really get to iterate on your code a lot faster. And this example is sort of a one-to-one, the box drops and that's all it does, but the simulator, you can also interact with the simulator just like you would with your app. So the other thing you can do is if you're in the simulator and you want to build, like I said, you want to see what it looks like on a Kindle Fire. You can see what it looks like on a Kindle Fire. You can see what it looks like. We have a variety of different skins that you can see. So if you wanted to see what it looks like on a 6 Plus or whatnot. Also, we have developers who are we have support in the platform for Ouya, and we have support for people who are building apps for Steam as well. So if you're interested in reaching that market, you can do that as well. So,
Quick question?
Yep.
In the past, I believe you also had a web app target. Is
Yes.
that still the case?
We have, yes, in that we have limited support for HTML5. Is that what you're saying?
Well, just in general. So sometimes people want to target, a few smaller platforms and then actually have a web app to where people can access in general through a browser.
Well, we have a web view, and you can take that view and then you can pull things into it, and then from there you can do webby things. But this all compiles to a native application. So at the end of the day, you have a native app. Whereas a hybrid or a web application, it has difficulties when it's disconnected, or it has sort of latency issues between the time when you tap on something and you get a response, right? You don't have that here. This is
Okay.
You write all your code in Lua, but then when you go to build, it actually accesses everything that needs to package it up as a native application. Which means you can have a database, you can have you can do remote calls to things and all that kind of stuff. So okay, so one other thing I want to show is that when you go to build, I don't know how big that is, but when you go to build, you can pick your target platform. So here we've got iOS, Android, OS 10, tvOS, those types of things. And this is a new machine, so I don't have other things enabled, but that's how you do it. You just write your code, and then when you go in, you pick the platform that you want to target. So like if I were to say Android, then there's stores here, so I can target the Amazon store, GameStick, Ouya, Google Play, those types of things. Okay, and then so let's look at a more robust example. So if we look at Corona Cannon, this is a kind of a Angry Birds clone. Then this same game will run with this code base, right, like it is right now, will run on Apple TV. You can put it on your device. I actually have it on my device if you want to see it. And it's your standard format, so you can if you want to drag it, you can move the camera around and you can see where you're supposed to go. And I don't remember if I have
people also use Corona for things other than games?
Yeah, so that's a great question, so thanks for that. Give me just a second. Recent, remember where it is. iOS? No, it's probably not gonna be a good example, is it? Yes, they do. A lot of times what people will do is they'll create utility apps. We have one guy that, and specifically I was going to try to find his app. I have it on my phone if you want to see it later, but he's created a news aggregator, and it's fantastic. It actually, I like to say, it actually works. You know, the way that you think a news aggregator will work. There's another one, menu.me. Is it menu.me? Yeah. So this one is actually works with restaurants, so that you can see the menu before you go in to the restaurant. And this app has some actually has some creative ways of lazy loading all the assets and everything that you need for the app. Makes remote calls to back-end systems and stuff like that. And this was actually developed by a developer in Portland, who the company was a startup. They wanted a developer, and I put him in touch with the developer. And he also did. I don't know if you guys remember Freebird. It was a movie a few years ago about turkeys at Thanksgiving. That, you know, sort of adventure sort of thing. And that studio is actually in Dallas, and the same guy did the promotional game for that movie, and they used Corona, so it's been used by studios. Something there that I wanted to say, but okay, so let's just go back to this example. So anyway, you know, on this example, like I said, you got one code base, and if I wanted to, I could go in and I could build it for Apple TV, I could build it for Android, I could build it for iOS, and it would all be the same. And the code is as sophisticated as you want it to be. I mean, you can do some crazy things. And if there is a thing that you want to do that you can't do, you find some functionality, right? You want to hook to some sort of fancy satellite system in the sky. You can use Enterprise, and our Enterprise system is basically you open, like if you were going to use iOS, you could open up Xcode, you could put your Corona project into your native project, and do 80% of your development there, and then code up the 20% that you wanted to do in Objective-C or Swift or whatever. And so a variety of different use cases. So, all right, I'm going to leave it there. If you guys have any questions or whatever, I appreciate your time. Let me know. I'll be in the back of the room.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it AirPlay a classroom, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there's a code. Oh, there it is. Cool. So I'm Stephen, and I'm here to give a presentation on an intro to in-app ads and ways to improve them. I don't know. I just realized I probably wasn't very clear in the title by what we'd be improving in the ads, but what I meant was the monetization of them, how to make more money off of them, not ways to make them look better or complaining about the way they look. Just a show of hands, has anybody here ever implemented ads within their app, whether it's iAd, Facebook? Awesome, that's cool. Cool. Does anybody have any experience with mediation or using multiple networks in the same app at the same time to try to improve it? Cool. Yeah, that's awesome news because it seems like whenever I'm on the web trying to find any resources on mediation or anything, I can't find anything. It's a big undocumented mess, whether you're using Android or MoPub or anything. And hopefully, I'm going to share my experiences implementing mediation. And hopefully what I'll hear is that, oh, I'm doing it wrong and that you guys have a better solution. That's the best thing I could hear. So just a quick background on myself. I am Stephen Bock. I'm a mobile software engineer, iOS and Android. At GrandX, we are, our slogan is commerce powered by original media. We run a few comedy websites and apps. We started with Total Frat Move is our website. It's a comedy/entertainment website for college students. It has a sister site, Total Sorority Move, and later we launched Post-Grad Problems, which is a comedy website for the Cubicle Warriors who have recently graduated. We actually today is the 1-year anniversary of manoutfitters.com, which is our website where we sell men's clothing and apparel. We also have Rowdy Gentleman, which is our own clothing brand. I'm wearing one of our shirts right now, but our most popular shirt we've sold over the years is our back-to-back World War Champs t-shirt. And the designs, those designs have been very popular if you've ever seen those. To share my first anecdote of when I got started working with ads, I started at GrandX 2 years ago, and at the time there were a couple of popular games on the App Store, and we thought, oh, we could make some funny adaptations of those, and we launched Greek God, which was inspired by 2048 and Threes and all those clones. It's got Greek. It has Greek letters to sort of associate itself with the frattiness of Total Frat Move. It was a game made for that audience, and then I'll give you a guess at who inspired Fratty Bird. What inspired that? We actually launched that. My boss came in and he's like, hey, you think you could cut together a Fratty Bird clone pretty quick? And I was like, yeah, I think so. Or a Flappy Bird clone. And I submitted it, and during the submission is actually when Dong went and pulled his app. So we hit the store at the right time when all these clones were doing really well. And we actually soared to number 7 overall free on the App Store. And we would have never guessed that it would have gotten up there, and we were so excited to see how much money we made off our ads, and we're getting hundreds of thousands of downloads, and great. And then the next day, any guesses how much money we made?
No.
We made dozens of dollars, and we made it. But anyway, I just want to share a few things we've done to improve our monetization of ads since then. When we launched the apps, we tried to do things the way we did them with web, using DFP and piping ads through there. And it didn't make a lot of money in that case, and we've learned over the next 2 years what we think is a lot. So there are 3 main types of ads you can have in an app, or the 3 popular ones are banners, interstitials, and native. The banner is what you typically see at the top or bottom of a screen or in a feed. It's typically called a 320 by 50 unit, but screens have gotten wider since then, but people still use it. Lingo, there's the full screen interstitial here, which takes up the whole screen. It can be video, interactive, and the native ads, which look like a piece of content in your app if you're scrolling through. Facebook really made this popular, and that you're scrolling through Facebook and you'll see something and you don't know if you're seeing it because it's an advertisement or your friend actually liked it or they just like that brand or whatever. And typically these 2 pay better than the banners, and depending on your use case or the content in your app, you can sort of figure out which ones make sense for yourself depending on your own strategy. I'll just start by explaining a technology that's about to be dead and how to use it in the next few weeks. One big pro with iAd that I did like is it's baked into the SDK. There was no really confusion on how to use it. You know, you sign up for your tax forms and everything to get paid out. But I usually have our accounting department take care of that. But it's pretty simple. You initialize an ad and you add it to view, and when you create the ad, there are these callbacks, these delegate callbacks to let you know if the ad loaded successfully or not. If it didn't, there can be multiple reasons why an ad doesn't show. It could be your network connection, or it could be they just didn't have an ad for that user. So typically the ad network, whether it's iAd or whoever, will let you know, say there's no ad to show. And in that case, you just lost an opportunity to make money. You had a user in your app and you didn't have an ad to show them that you can get paid for. Some pros and cons. Yes.
Are you gonna be talking about Apple's recent announcement?
Yes, I'm gonna get to that. It's more of a just open discussion at the end, but some iAd pros and cons. While it still exists, it's quick and easy. It has a pretty high fill rate for our game apps like Friday Bird and Greek God, but we saw terrible fill rates for our media applications. And we didn't know if maybe that was because our content was somewhat in SFW some of the times, and that gave us a mature rating, which I know a lot of the ads on the iAd network were typically for games and other apps. So we didn't know if that was maybe it, but we had a very extremely low fill rate, almost nothing on those. I've run into typical just Apple service review issues when submitting app updates that had to do with iAd. In fact, it makes it take longer to get reviewed because they have to have their iAd team look at it and make sure your implementation is right and not against the end of their terms. Actually, one time, their tax agreement that we filled out, their system was reporting that it was not filled out even though we clicked everything, okayed it, and we didn't get paid for almost a month while they were trying to figure out what was wrong, and then they fixed something and sent us an email apologizing for it, but didn't refund us for any of the ad impressions we missed out on. The ads aren't super well targeted, and there's a lot of rumors that Apple didn't open up to any of the advertisers all the data that they wanted, and that they could typically target a lot better on AdMob and Facebook, who open up all the data to you about what apps the users are using and everything. Facebook audience, we've had a lot of success with them. They're great. They're in-app only. Until actually the other day, they launched our web SDK. After doing the typical stuff in your delegate for setting up a Facebook SDK, if any of you aren't familiar with it, I'm not going to delve too far into this stuff. I'll just stay high level here. I'll jump to using or initializing a Facebook banner. It's very similar to iAd, basically what I just showed you. You create it, and then you load it. You get the callback as if it loaded or not, and then a short description as to why or why not. Some pros and cons to Facebook Audience Network. One big pro is that they're extremely well targeted. Facebook knows us all inside and out, except for if any of us in here don't have a profile or use any of our apps on our phone. They have a high CPM for their banners, but one problem is their fill rate is 0 if you aren't a Facebook user. If they can't tell who you are, they're not going to serve an ad. So if you have your advertising identifier disabled, which is in your settings, like you limit tracking so Facebook can't track you and serve you ads, or if you don't have the Facebook app installed on your phone, they haven't been able to determine who you are. But one thing with Facebook Audience is users don't have to be signed into Facebook within your app to serve them advertisements. That's one common misconception. You can serve Facebook Audience banners to people who aren't signed in to your app with Facebook, but they need to have Facebook on their phone. AdMob banners, pretty much the exact same thing. You create the ad, you get a callback as to whether it was successful or not. Big pro with AdMob, they have a massive ad inventory. From what I've seen, I almost always have like a 99% fill rate on it. It's owned by Google, which one big benefit here is that that's been Google's big core part of their business for a very long time. Ads are, very important to them. So like these SDKs and this service is going to get a lot of attention and care from them. You don't have to worry about it being parsed. That's my new verb. It's very well targeted as well, similar to Facebook. The revenue here is almost always lower than iAd and Facebook from what I've seen for banners. But the fill rate's great, and those are the advantages of it. I had one other one I just had in my head that I was just about to blurt out and I forgot. Come back.
Quick question.
Yes.
On your con there, as far as lower revenue, is that like in a per click, or is that overall, like on a monthly basis?
Cost per click and cost per impression. That's what I've seen in my apps. I only know the apps that, I don't see other people's revenue numbers. in their
Because if
apps.
you have almost 100% fill rate, but you're getting lower, was it CPM?
Mhm.
Is that correct? You could end up making more revenue in the long run. So I'm
Correct.
trying to figure out which way.
Okay, so when I say higher revenue, revenue was a forward to use here. I'll say lower CPM.
Okay.
Yeah, it always has a lower CPM. So yeah, but 100% fill rate, if you're getting serving 100 times as many ads, making half as much money per ad, you're still gonna make a lot more money.
Okay.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, that was poorly phrased on my part. Thank you.
Does AdMob require the advertising identifier?
It does not, but the revenue, great question, the revenue will be much higher for users with their advertising identifier enabled because they can target ads better at them. So if you were advertising your app, your book scanning app, and you wanted it to be well targeted, and you'd be willing to pay more for a well targeted.
Yeah, and I guess you can see
impression.
the installs, like you can track them with the identifier, without you can't.
Yeah, you pretty much can't. I think Facebook and Google might track some stuff around that, but they're kind of not supposed to as well. So wouldn't it be nice if there was like a way to just combine all of these into, take advantage of all of them? For example, you ask for a Facebook ad first, and since it pays the best, display it, but if it's not there, display an AdMob ad or any combination of those. And like if we looked at an example, so here's some fake data I have up for Facebook audience. Imagine it has a 2.76 CPM, which means that's how much you get paid for every 1,000 impressions you show, but only an 85% fill, which means getting paid really well, but we don't have an ad for everybody. And then iAd, let's say, had a much lower CPM and fill almost 93% of the time, and AdMob has the lowest of all, but almost 100% fill rate. And this is all example data. Don't think that this is like actually what these are. I'm talking on this network or that network. I'm just saying hypothetically, if you had 3 networks and these are the 3 rates you were getting, fill rates and CPMs you were getting, this is a way you could take advantage of it. You could program your own, what I call a waterfall approach, where you try one, then the other, then the other. You probably want to stack the one that pays the best at the top of the waterfall, and you just code this yourself. You say, try this one, then try that one, or try Facebook, then try iAd, then try AdMob, and then maybe serve a house ad if you have something that your company sells. In our case, we sell the TFM book is something we sell online. We have our own clothing line as well, so we have physical goods that we want to sell these people if we can't get paid to sell this advertising spot, or if we can't get paid enough. So you could do all of this in your code, but what if AdMob, who knows a lot about a specific user, when David opens my app, what if AdMob at that specific moment was willing to pay more for that impression than Facebook was willing to. It would have never even gotten the opportunity to serve that impression because you had it hard-coded and you have to try this one first. So what they offer is a dynamic form of mediation, or what some places do. This allows more real-time data to be used to determine which ad should be shown. We've had success using AdMob itself as our mediator. You can use other services such as MoPub. I've heard of AppNexus, some other ones, to act as a mediator. So what we have right here is when you log into AdMob and you create an ad unit. So say this ad unit here, this banner in our feed, we want to input what we're making on Facebook, so that Google knows what we're making on these three things, or AdMob knows. And when David comes in, opens the app, the request is sent to AdMob, and AdMob knows real time for that impression. If they can beat that 276, they're going to serve it. If they can't beat that 276, they'll try iAd. And if Facebook can't fill, then we'll try iAd, then we'll try AdMob. So this is more dynamic and like helps you earn more revenue that way. So one big problem with mediation, which I started off my presentation complaining about it, how it's like really undocumented, and I don't know if it's because Google doesn't want you like creating all this competition in their own network, which it sounds disadvantaged, like a disadvantage to themselves to like openly offer the ability to compete with Facebook and iAd and all of these competitors. But these ad networks sort of on the side offer you the ability to use them as your mediator. But they kind of, here's the website for AdMob, and just to give you an example of like using, they want you to use them as for mediation because that means any ad that isn't filled, they'll win, because even though they're on the bottom of that waterfall, actually they're at the top and the bottom, which is their advantage, but they'd rather be the whole thing. Let's see. So in AdMob's documentation, they have mediation networks down here and getting started, and they link to all of the different websites or different ad networks you can include: Facebook, iAd, anybody. But it's not straightforward how to implement them. Many of them you have to include the SDK. For example, Facebook, you have to include their SDK, AdMob's SDK, and an adapter which works with the SDK when you're mediating through AdMob, that way to get it to work. And they aren't really clear. They sort of link you out. Like, let me look at Facebook here. Facebook. So let's say you want to use the Facebook, or use AdMob to mediate Facebook and AdMob. Well, you click the link to download the adapter, and it just downloads a file. It doesn't really like tell you, all right, who's this? Who made this? Is it Facebook? Is it Google? What is this adapter thing? Who is it maintained by? There's not really much documentation like what you need, the SDK or anything, because neither side really wants you doing this. They'd rather you Facebook would rather you just use Facebook, or you just use AdMob. And if you link to the other side's documentation, a lot of times these adapters will be out of date with the newest SDK, etc. So, like, if we had a network that we tried to include a couple months ago, Millennial Media, and it was doing well for us in one of our ad placements above our web view, but all of a sudden it started asking users to turn on Bluetooth randomly. They're like, you need Bluetooth on in your app. And so it turns out that was when iOS 9 was released, that if you tried to use Bluetooth while it was off, that pop-up would happen. And secretly their ad SDK was triggering that. They was using Bluetooth without ever asking them before, and iOS 9 caused that to happen. Yeah, so it's a big undocumented mess. Hard to find help in this area, but we increased our revenues a lot by doing this, much higher than $50 from hundreds of thousands of users. Is everyone familiar with the concept of the IDFA? When you see this form when you're submitting an app, this is pretty familiar to everybody, right? When you're submitting your app update to iTunes?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. Well, if you say yes, then you have to do more work, so you go back and click no.
Yeah, it's much easier to say no up front, right? But if you actually are using it, like you have to say like what you're using it for, to serve advertisements in the app, or some other stuff advertising related. And what this IDFA does is it's a unique identifier for you, so that ads can be targeted at you, but Apple allows you a way to back out of it and reset your advertising identifier, so Facebook then kind of forgets who you are. So this is one thing with iAd, and that, like, one thing I read about it a lot is that Apple's big differentiator that they push from Google is their privacy, and they're not selling you as a product. So doing that, or taking that stance, but then also saying we own an ad network in iAd was kind of hypocritical in many ways. And they're saying like, hey, we're the company that doesn't sell your data, but they were selling your data. So part of them, and they were just really bad at it. iAd was not the greatest. So I think there are two reasons they're falling out. Does anybody have any other hypotheses as to why iAd is shutting down?
It's on the first page. They said, I think they end at the end of June.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I guess what I'm asking is like, what's everybody's take on it? Why do you think they're shutting down? Like, what do you think their reason is?
Well.
Huh?
Because they're not doing well at all.
Yeah, right. They're terrible. That's one thing. And one big thing is they didn't want to open up the user data to everyone, and that's always been their mantra. And when they didn't do that, they realized they couldn't make much money at being an ad network.
I think historically though, if you go back and look at the beginning of iAds, it was sort of, the community developers wanted it. They wanted a way to monetize their apps. They wanted and then Apple certainly wanted to provide them something, and so they came up with something, right? But then, as we're seeing, the advertisers that are there are not there, right? So it just sort of shrivels on the vine.
Yeah.
And then it's, they're kind of like, well, let's just get rid of it.
Yep.
So.
And yeah, so one thing I'm worried about is if they're going to take a stance and try and like maybe in the future get rid of the IDFA altogether. I know that's a big hypothetical, but that's kind of a concern to me, is like if Apple, truly wants to be like, hey, we're not selling your data, why do they even offer this in the first place? So that's one big
Kimco
concern.
seems to be like really taking a strong stance on that, like not selling your data, the personal information. So I think that this is all in that direction. Like he's really trying to make sense, like we will never ever send a user's data. And this was kind of like you said, this was bypassing that whole stance, and
Yeah.
we're saying like, no, we're gonna go back to that. And
Yeah, I think that is a big part of it. So does anybody, does anybody here have any experience with ad mediation?
Well, I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
So, if you turn that on right there, at radio control, does it, so it's saying it limits ad tracking. Now,
Mhm.
does that affect Facebook's ad tracking on your phone and Google?
Yes, because when you go back and open up, say, our app TFM,
Okay.
we don't know who you are. And then Facebook won't be able to, when I call for a Facebook ad, Facebook won't be able, when I make this call for a Facebook ad, if we don't have an identifier, a unique identifier for you to send to Facebook with this call, Facebook will not return an ad, because they only want to, if David's buying ads for his textbook scanning app, they don't want to serve an ad unless they know it's well targeted at the people he wants to show it to.
So I guess what's pretty much real confusing about that is the word limit, because it seems like what you're saying is it turns off.
Oh, yeah.
That they recognize you rather than.
So by turning it on, you are limiting the ad tracking capabilities. You're going incognito in a way if you turn it on.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
what I'm
You turn it
saying.
on, you're saying, I want to be
Facebook,
anonymous.
Facebook.
On Google,
Oh, Google won't even serve an ad feed or?
They will, it just won't pay as well.
You won't pay as well.
So they have enough ad inventory to where they're like, okay, we'll give you a 1 or 2 cent CPM if you'll serve this ad to an anonymous user. Very
And,
often.
and they say limiting, because there are certain ways where you can sometimes figure out who someone is between different apps, but it's.
Yeah, with
it's
IP
not like-
address and stuff like that. Yeah, there are ways to figure that out. So that is a good way to look at the way they worded it. Limiting is probably the perfect phrasing, but it is contextually very confusing, like you said. So does anybody have any experience using multiple ad networks at once, or using mediation, or any stories to share? So everyone, what
Static
ad?
version.
Huh?
Just a static version of what you were talking about earlier.
So you just use like Facebook audience out of the box, or
Well, just, making a call, if you don't get an ad, then.
Then try another one.
Waterfall and go to the next thing.
and that works like if you're not doing that, at least like this is so much better than just doing the single call, because if you're doing Facebook and not getting paid for 15% of your calls, which is actually even more because requests aren't even being made when that IDFA is off, and I think it's less than 10% of people have that enabled to where they're anonymous. But when you factor that in, that's a lot of revenue you're not making. And then if AdMob could be beating some of those impressions, we actually found that AdMob's interstitials, for us at least, are paying a lot better. AdMob's interstitials are paying much higher than Facebook audience for us right now.
Are you using AdMob in all of your apps now? Is that what you're trying to move toward, or?
Right now we are. We're using all three, and then Millennial Media, and can't think of the other one right now. But we're using AdMob for the mediation, and that like it checks AdMob CPM first, sees if it can beat it, the 276 here, and then it falls back to Facebook. So, and we've had success, a lot of success there. I've heard great things about MoPub lately. I've heard that they're a great service to use for mediation, and that their ads pay really well on top of it too, and they integrate with Facebook audience and everyone else as well.
Who is it?
MoPub, they're owned by Twitter, MOPUB.
How often are you updating the manual CPM?
Yeah, a few times a week usually. We would try to do it every day if we could, but it's just a matter of getting around to it. So we just try and keep a rough number there.
Daily average to put in there?
Actually, that Millennial Media SDK we used, they had an API that AdMob would use to get a real-time CPM, or basically an average over the last 24 hours. So that was really nice. But then we kind of had trouble with what or the Bluetooth thing they had, and so we just turned them off altogether. That would be, if they knew real-time how much Facebook was willing to pay,
For that
oh
specific
wow,
user.
we'd be able to increase revenues big time. But
Is that a technical limitation?
yeah, because the way the mediation works is that when we make the request for an ad and AdMob says, no, I can't beat Facebook, so serve a Facebook ad, it's just telling the app Facebook won. So then the app has to make the call direct to Facebook. There's no link between these two. It's simply a call back to the app to say Facebook won, but we don't know for how much, so.
But you can't ask Facebook
You can't prefetch the
what they
price?
pay
Right.
for that ad?
You can't. because if we could fetch all three and ask them what
And
that
then-
price value is, but at the app level, you don't know that. They don't give that data back. I think some ad networks might, which kind of allow you to build your own mediation layer within your app client, which if you can get enough calls to do that. You
So if you're using like MoPub, you don't even you have to use averages for all three.
Right. So if I put MoPub in here, you just put what your average is over the last week, and it sort of puts all the magic here. Yeah, ideally we'd have.
So with the way that AdMob is like the top and the bottom range,
Mhm.
it's really advantageous then to use them for mediation, because the average AdMob is lower than Facebook, but sometimes it goes above.
Right, because if there was a specific ad that's well targeted for a prescription pill for some disease,
Yeah.
that pays a $23 CPM, that you'd want this is here to catch. So,
And Facebook is not that crazy in their fluctuation between users.
oh, they are.
Oh, they are too.
They are, but what we input right here is just the average
Yeah.
to help provide guidance of which one to call, which one to not call.
Is that average just app general or per specific like buckets of users?
Oh, so this is for this unit right here. So like you would enter the average CPM that you're getting from Facebook right here.
Okay.
So you would log into your Facebook dashboard, see how much you're getting paid by Facebook to serve ads in this unit right here in your feed. And then AdMob would use that to help determine who wins every specific impression. So I know I'm probably really bad at explaining this because there's a lot of jargon here, like the CPMs and the revenue and calling one network and another and the way they compete, but they don't tell each other how much every impression is worth. And I have a hard time understanding all this because, and maybe this is the reason why it is so undocumented and not talked about very much, and nobody is
So
open.
the decision the mediator's making is based on static data you put in your config, basically, and you just.
Correct. It's just, this data right here helps determine the winner, but then that call is made. So it is possible that Facebook wins against AdMob, but then Facebook fails to load an ad, and then it falls back to iAd, and then it falls back to AdMob. So you can only improve it so much because it is not an ideal situation. An ideal situation would be they'd all be competing for that specific impression at that specific moment, but they don't share that data with each other because it would be at a disadvantage to give that data to AdMob.
It would tip the economy scale. So how, if you pull an ad via the ad network's API, how do they know if you ever render it?
They actually have, Facebook actually, if you look here, their CPM, so their fill rate is the fills over the requests. So if you make 83,000 requests and they fill 71,000, you have an 85% fill rate. But you only get paid based on the ads that are shown on the screen, which Facebook detects themselves. So even though we got 71,000 ads on this day, we displayed 41. So if you did the math here, 41 times, or 41,235 times 2.76 is what you get paid. But AdMob doesn't really expose that. They just count everything as an impression. You don't have to show them. So that's something to factor in too. You would actually probably not want to enter. I keep walking over like these are two different monitors. I forget that they're the same. You probably want to lower this to account for that because 2.76, the CPM here and the CPM here are not relative in that way. So sorry, I just added another layer of confusion probably.
How technically do they verify which rendered?
I'm not sure. It's I think they just have a callback on a UI view that knows when it did appear.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some kind of like, some kind of way for them to verify that, because it is $1 billion thing. Like if you cheat that, then they'd be losing like billions of dollars. So I'm pretty sure they figured out a way to verify those are real.
Interesting.
Because I know like even Google AdSense they figured out too. So that was web, which seems more hackable than iOS.
And you could be calling ads and not showing them and getting paid for some of them, but say AdMob would catch on to that with your terrible click-through rate,
Yeah.
then you would get paid less. Because that affects how much you get paid as well.
Do they break down the
Sure.
CPM per like type of user, or do they just give you like a average?
Average, basically, for that
Okay.
unit. So they don't expose all that data to say like, oh, if you gathered more of these types of users, these are the
Yeah.
valuable ones. That'd be
Like
nice.
the
I wish,
prescription
Facebook should
pill
tell me
people.
that, right?
You know, the prescription pill
Yeah.
people, man, you wanna serve them.
Yeah, we need to get more of those users, right?
So, I always thought that you were paid for ads based off of clicks, but it sounds like, from what you're saying, you're paid off of impressions.
It's kind of a factor of both, but the relative, when you're someone who is a publisher and you're putting ads in your own app, what you're pretty much interested in is the CPM, which is the cost per impression, because that's what affects your revenue the most. They let you know the click-through rate as well, but there are two different ways. When David advertises his book-selling app on Facebook or AdMob or wherever, he can choose to pay per click, or he can say, I want 100,000 impressions at this rate. So, because there are different models of businesses, when they advertise, like Coke doesn't really care about you clicking through, because you're not gonna order Coke online. They just want Coca-Cola in your face. Like, they want that brand awareness there, so they're paying on a per impression. They don't get anything when you click it. You're not gonna make an in-app purchase for Coca-Cola. So those are more relative to the people advertising. But all that information is available here. So, but what you're really interested in is the CPM. But if you can up your click-through rate by putting your banner at the top or bottom based on whatever your app is, that is good for you. You do want to have a higher click-through rate, because that means people are interested in the ads you're serving, and you will get paid better. Any other questions? Yeah.
So kind of piggyback off that, is it one or the other, or can you do both?
As a publisher, as like someone making an app that's putting
Ads and, yeah.
in your app,
Yes.
you get the data for both. Yeah, you aren't one or the other.
You get the data for both, but I'm saying you get paid for both. Do you get paid
Either
for
way, it's
impressions and
the like cost per click is just an average.
Yeah, so you don't even, you can say like which one it should optimize for, but then at the end of the day, they just tell you like, we spent this money, you got this money.
Yeah.
You don't know ahead of time exactly what you're gonna get for your money.
You can't ask for one or the other as a.
Yeah, but
As a
he's
publisher.
asking if the users, if some high percentage of users actually taps on the ad, you get paid better.
Yes, you will, relatively. Yes, certainly. You don't want to put it in a place where nobody's ever going to tap it. Any other questions or anything?
I had an experience with Google AdSense where I had a really high click rate and it got banned.
Oh no, what'd you do?
Have you heard of that before? Because when I Googled it, it was all over.
Oh yeah? What
People
happened?
experiencing it. So it was a game, and there was a button that was close to the ads.
Uh-huh.
And the users clicked, it was roll the dice. And the users would misclick that button on the ad just repeatedly.
Oh wow, and so Google actually flagged you.
Yeah.
Someone looked at you and said, this is.
So that was my speculation, though. They just said, they listed one of their terms was like,
Yeah.
buttons can't be too close to the ad.
That's actually, yeah, you can't be like tricking people into
Yeah.
clicking the ad, like have a pop-up that appears over it and then it disappears and you tap it. It's whack-a-mole and then all of a sudden you put it where, that is explicitly against their rules. You'd have to be getting enough traffic to where they come in and take a look and like, okay, why is the click-through rate 10%? People don't click 1 out of every 10 ads they see.
Yeah.
You're also not supposed to click your own ads.
Yep.
Yeah, you can get flagged for that. So one weird thing with when you're doing mediation or using mediation, it is against everyone's policy, like Facebook, AdMob, to use live ads in your development, because you basically set a flag here to say if it's test or not, if you're testing on your own device. But if you're using mediation, you have to use production ads to like make sure it went through all the mediation steps. So I haven't gotten to the point where have gotten flagged or in trouble for that yet. But I talked to a rep at AdMob, and she said that if I ever do, like, we can just reach out to them and say, hey, we were serving ads to ourselves because we have to for mediation, for testing purposes. And yeah, you might get blacklisted for a short period of time.
The interesting part of that was there was an appeals process. After they said, we're gonna terminate your ad service. So I wrote the letter, said, I'm sorry, I'll move the buttons. That's the only, you didn't tell me why I got banned, but moved everything apart, said, I did everything I could, and they said, nope.
Oh, no.
They never say why, because they don't want you to figure out how to defeat the system.
Yeah, I know that Apple gets a lot of crap for their review process, but I've had a couple experiences with the Android, the Google Play store, where they just like outright ban you for things instead of just like giving you a warning or something. In our Postgrad Problems app, which is actually our more mild content, a lot less NSFW, all of a sudden we got pulled from the Google Play Store, and they said it was because we had sexually explicit imagery, and we're like, whoa, what was that? We didn't post anything. Like, what was it? And I had to reach out. They came back to me. They said it was last year when Kentucky was about to go 40-0, the perfect undefeated basketball season. Somebody the week before was tattooed on their butt cheek 40-0, and we had posted that. And it wasn't even a full butt cheek, it was just a tattoo on that, but that was explicitly against Google's guidelines, and somebody reported us for that, and they just pulled us. We couldn't resubmit an update or anything. If we wanted to launch PGP, Postgrad Problems again, on Google Play, we had to submit a completely different binary and under a different package name, so old users wouldn't get the update or anything. But luckily, like, we just said, all right, forget this, we're gonna come back to this later. And we happened to get a connection who worked for AdMob, who looked into it for us and talked to the people over at Google Play and got us whitelisted again. So we just happened to stumble upon that connection. If not, that would have never gotten, like, when you see a drawing of Cupid, you know, shooting an arrow, that's more graphic than this image of this guy's tattoo was. But that was our experience there. Does anybody have any other questions or experiences they've had with ads?
Can you briefly discuss or diagram kind of the design pattern for how best how you mediate?
This is what we've had success with, mostly with just these two, Facebook audience and AdMob. While ad was in here in our games, that was successful in our Greek God and Friday Bird games, because people wanted to use iAd to advertise games and other games, is my guess, is why it was paying well there, but not in our content apps. This is what we've found to be most successful with those two, and we had Millennial Media in there a bit until we had that issue with their Bluetooth stuff. We're trying to experiment more and more with other networks, but we find that if we want to include, there's one like MobFox, if we include their SDK, all of a sudden it conflicts with the Facebook adapter, and you can't include them in the same project or anything. And then we talked to them about that, like, oh, we'll get our developer on it to go work on it, and like 2 days later they released a version of their adapter. We're like, they really just did that just for us? They must not have much business here in the whole mediation situation. We started displaying some of their ads, and they had weird redirects when we wouldn't even tap them and things. And so it's tough finding the ones that work well with this, and you run into a lot of constraints. So any learnings anybody ever has here, I'd love to hear, because I feel like I've been struggling with this for a year and a half, and I feel like I've learned a lot, but then I realized, oh, yeah, we were just mediating 3 different networks. We got 3 to work. What's it take to get 5 competing with each other?
Is there any way to get real-time CPM from Facebook audience?
That would be nice, man. Like, I would love to, when I get returned an ad, whether it's Facebook, AdMob, whatever, to know how much I'm getting paid for that impression real time in the app. And then I could say, no, forget that, I'll use this one from AdMob, I just called instead. I do know that on our website, we've been working with, I think it's AppNexus on our website, that actually does do that on the web now. Their ad network, if you use them, you can mediate, and they do pre-bidding like that, where you're getting paid real-time impression for that user, which is awesome. And I know that like our CEO loves, he's also our ad ops guy. He loves that ever since we've implemented it, and we're excited to, they've started rolling out an SDK too. We're excited to play with that. So AppNexus is one you should look at. It looked exciting. Their documentation looked awesome. They had like a Cocoa Pod for every adapter listed there. So it sounded kind of magical, like it doesn't have all this mess that's here, but maybe it's just a different mess. Maybe it's not any good. But I can only find out when I mess with that ad network. But yeah, these are all my learnings, and sorry if it's messy, any of my explanations. I just wanted to share it.
Awesome.
Because I thought it was something that's not around on the web very much, if you want to look it up. And that was not 10 minutes long, I'm sorry. It's, okay. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, as far as IAD going away, there seems to be some confusion out there as far as whether IAD completely is going away, or if it's just the app network part of IAD that's going away.
I remember they originally reported that they were gonna leave a way in there for you to serve house ads to your units within your app. Like you could just fill it with something so it's not going to waste. I don't know if that meant, oh, cool, I can go pipe AdMob through that unit that was already there or what, but Apple hasn't commented on that since.
Campaigns, what I've read, I think it's just your own app campaigns where you're advertising your own apps with another app on the app.
That's it?
So I think for external
Yeah.
advertisers, it's still there.
Like I had heard that, but I
Coca-Cola.
haven't heard any official word on that yet. Because if that's the case, we'd love to do some ad impressions for our own content to fill those, because that we'd want to fill those with something. We don't want those being empty. That's a waste.
You could do that locally without the SDK well, right?
Right. That's actually how on the native ad I have in our feed that looks like our content. Since there's none of the SDKs, AdMob or anybody offers mediation for native ads yet. They only offer it for banners and interstitials. I fall back to just displaying our own image for our own product. So it's not really being called from an ad network. It's just a default image. It says, hey, go download our Man Outfitters app. It's this other app we have that we think is awesome.
Do you actually use affiliate programs to, if someone would click and go to the store, do you actually try to get money back out of that? Or?
Oh no, it's actually, it goes to our own business, our own other business.
Oh,
so that's our like fallback. If we can't display an ad at all, we say, hey, go download this app we have where we're selling.
But these
Man
apps,
clothes.
for example, you will have an ad that will be on the App Store, an app that will be on the App Store, and you will cross-reference your own applications, right?
Right.
So you could have an affiliate link to be able to actually get some money out of that. If the person would click on that ad, go to the App Store and buy it from there.
Yeah, because that is our own. They'd be buying from us though, so it's not really.
No, but my point is
Third-party
that if you can have, like if you have a website and people will click on the advertisement from your website and go buy something, you can get some money back out of that, right? Affiliate program. I believe you can do the same thing with the App Store.
For downloads?
Yeah, there's an affiliate program
for downloads.
Yeah.
Not really.
And actually, it's even better than that. Like if someone will go through the App Store through your link and
Yes,
free
yes.
and buy another app, you will still get some money from that.
Okay. I was confused because I was using our app as an example. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, that's one of the check boxes you have to check on the IDFA. Checkbox when you submit your app. I'm not on the screen. But the IDFA checklist. Classroom's not responding. Well, on that IDFA checklist you have to fill out, one of them says, it says, my screen keeps blinking and like it's coming up there, and it doesn't, attribute the app installation to a previously served advertisement, like you were saying. Yes, yes, absolutely.
What does it say?
When you're filling out the screen as to why you're using the IDFA, one of the reasons you can say is to attribute the app installation to a previously served advertisement, meaning that you could say an affiliate linked to this app and downloaded it. Now that it's open, we're basically affiliating those two together, like, so that way they can get paid for that affiliation. Or attribute it to an action taken in the app. So if you advertise the $20 bundle for, what do you buy in Candy Crush? Like extra lives? And somebody comes, if you advertise that in an ad and somebody clicks it and goes and buys it, that gets attributed to that advertisement.
You mentioned the interstitial ads earlier. Is there a big difference in the payment, the CPM versus?
Yes, those are the highest, but they're also the most annoying for a user.
Have you found a balance between?
We do a mix of all of them. We feel like the native ad is a good balance between CPM and annoying, at least for our content, because as people are scrolling through our stories and they scroll past one that's an ad, but it's a well-targeted Facebook native ad that looks like content that is kind of meaningful to the user, they probably just scroll past it, or they might actually click it. It kind of feels natural, like an ad. There's a reason why Facebook's ads are doing so well, is kind of came up with that native thing. The banners don't pay as well, but you can show them a lot more often because they aren't really that annoying to a user. Any site you're on with a banner, it's pretty unobtrusive. It's not in the way of the content or anything. But the native ads are my favorite in terms of like effectiveness and in terms of how much I get paid for them.
So when you do your mediation, you target one for if it's for a banner and another mediation if it's for interstitial, or is it the same mediation?
Actually, yeah, for native ads, since they're really new and they require a lot of like custom stuff for, say, the Facebook SDK for rendering, mediation just doesn't really work for native ads. It's AdMob tried it for a little bit and put it out in beta, and then they pulled that. So, yeah, mediating native ads is not anything anybody's done. I know that when we were looking into App Nexus, they were talking about how they'd been experimenting with it, but nobody's really nailed it yet. And I hope somebody does soon, because that could really increase revenue.
For real-time pricing,
or just mediation in general, the dynamic. What I'd like to do is get it to where at least we have a waterfall of Facebook and then AdMob and then display our house, because right now it's just try Facebook. If it's not there, display the house ad. So it's displaying the house ad a lot because fill rate's 85–90%, and then there's users who have the IDFA turned on.
Does Twitter have any ad network they use?
Oh, MoPub.
Oh, Facebook.
MoPub is owned by Twitter, and so like the big advantage there is like Twitter knows a lot of people's IDFAs, so then they can associate it with that and their behavior. And if you have the Twitter SDK in your app, it knows the behavior of other apps they're using, and they have an analytics platform too with answers and Crashlytics. All of a sudden, Twitter knows a lot of the apps you're using with that IDFA. Any app that uses Crashlytics, Twitter knows that you're using and all your users are using. So that was actually a big acquisition for them. I think that's why Facebook wanted Parse, is they realized all these apps are using Parse, collect these IDFAs, we know who's using what. And they can track more behaviors like that and target ads towards people. That way, same with WhatsApp.
Does Flurry have its app network?
Yeah, that's what Flurry. Flurry is actually two things. It's ads and analytics. Seems like everybody's doing both at the same time now because they kind of go hand in hand.
Have you tried?
I have. We got it up and working with the mediation, and then there was something funny. There was like some conflict of SDKs if we wanted to have Flurry and Facebook and AdMob mediation. So I do know that, like, I think Flurry has, you can use them as a mediator as well, so that they're at the top and the bottom of the sandwich. Facebook doesn't offer mediation at all. They want you to use Facebook or nothing, or mediate Facebook through something else. You can figure out a way to do that. So, does anybody have apps on the App Store right now that they have ads live in them? What ad networks do you guys use? iAd? Oh, so you guys are possibly looking for a replacement right now. So I hope I helped you out.
Great topic.
I hope I helped you out. I hope I didn't confuse you anymore, because I feel like I confused myself standing up here. Maybe that's not what I should tell myself after I give a
Switching
presentation.
that over to AdMob now, which I'm just about to submit, but I have never used the IDFA identifier before, so definitely need to put that on.
Say the SDK.
The SDK, actually, the AdMob SDK is grabbing it no matter what, whether you tell it to or not.
But when you submit the app to the App Store, you have to tell it,
Yeah, check that. That's a legal.
because all the
You,
previous ones I've never turned that on.
yeah, you want to check that. And in fact, a lot of the SDKs you use, you're supposed to check it. I think if you have the Facebook SDK in your app at all,
Right.
you're supposed to check it. That just covers your back if anybody
So
ever
so
pursues
by
you
checking
legally.
that,
But
you're really just agreeing to terms, it doesn't affect the review process too much.
right, unless one of those reviewers somehow catches it, but I don't think they're looking at that most of the time. Yeah, that's a completely legal checkbox. I haven't heard of an app being rejected for that, and actually their threat at the bottom of that
So you have to
is
resubmit a binary?
that you'd have to resubmit a binary. It doesn't say anything about being banned or anything. It's mostly just a privacy thing they have to meet for certain countries and things. But yeah, always check it if you're using anything that uses the IDFA.
It seems that there's a lot of SDKs and we don't always know what they're doing. Do you guys do any type of like spoofing, like listening, checking a little bit what they're doing before launching anything, or?
What was the SDK that when, I don't know if it was iOS 8 or iOS 9 came out, that all of a sudden it was checking all these URL schemes?
That's Twitter.
Yeah.
And it was all of a sudden it's like your app
Associate
cannot
all
query
the
for the scheme
app
Kindle.
installs.
I was getting the Kindle scheme a lot. I was checking to see if I had the Kindle app. Twitter was just, checking that can open on hundreds of apps in the span of a second and basically figuring out what apps you had installed. But yeah, Apple put the hammer on that and prevented that. And yeah, what we found with the most recent iOS release was that Millennial Media was using Bluetooth to, I guess, track the beacons around you maybe to get data that way.
I thought they were using the Bluetooth identifier, like Bluetooth devices have like a MAC address type deal,
Ah.
and that's what they were using for the device identification or something.
That could
like
be it. I hadn't thought of that.
I think that was one thing about
That's
it.
a great thought. Huh. Interesting. Anybody else? I'm not trying to like hurry up and sit down, but I will, so we can talk about parse and complain about that, because we haven't done that yet.
Awesome. Well, learned a lot.
You saved us 18 months.
Yeah. Learning. Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot to learn to that. I wish we could have had some better.
Mediations.
Yeah, when Friday Bird was successful, but
Yeah.
it made me realize that the Dong Win developer was really smart by pulling it from the App Store, because then people didn't want to delete it.
Yeah.
Because it's a game you play for a little bit, and you're like, haha, that was funny, I'll go delete it. So that forced people to keep it on their phone and play it in the future.
Smart.
I'm thinking he might release it again someday, it's like a throwback.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we have 30 more minutes here, so we can stick around and talk about stuff. And thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
You should Google banned on Google AdSense. Hundreds of stories.
Yeah, that's a
really?
big deal.
Got appealed and they didn't say anything, and I just got banned.
Yeah, I don't have much experience using the web stuff, but my coworkers do.
Probably got my.
Don't have anything planned.
I do have t-shirts in the back, if anybody's interested.
But you could just create an account, put load it, send it out if you want.
So I've had
Whatever. I mean, I made a lot of money in that truck.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got paid for a lot of credits. Did they pay it out, or did they freeze it?
Yeah, they paid it out. Well, they froze the last little bit.
But yeah,
The last
it is
one.
kind of like
I guess they
expertise
started
that I now
it.
can't use anymore.
Well, you might be able to.
Do you have any screenshots of what it looked like?
If you do the open server.
Like the hash waistband in comparison to like the button or whatever?
And, yeah, and when we were working on our story consumer.
Is it not that obvious?
It was basically a
We were
whole
basically
button.
devices that iOS
And then they had to add everything else on top.
basically like
And they were like,
basically all it does is hard to use
I mean, I guess people were just like hammering it like this, so they miss a lot.
cloud
Oh, got it.
which lets you like run really easy, like just inject logic.
Oh, okay, so you had an app that was
But it's really, it's not, I think it's
Yeah.
gonna be
AdSense
probably,
in there.
a year from now, we'll work
Those pay a little?
move that over. And
See, I don't know
really the
relative
valuable stuff is kind of
to the
like.
real world. This is a lawsuit.
It's kind of like, if,
I know.
like, five-sided,
Per month. They
Swift only.
play
Like, it'd be kind of like,
You know, one big thing with Lightyear is that it doesn't have all the cookie information that is in your full Safari and web browser.
Have you looked at it?
So if it's loading an ad,
Like what it actually is? I haven't looked at it.
it can't
I'm
target.
wondering how hard it would be to recreate their web app.
well, I saw someone on Twitter say that it only took like an hour or two to move over their app.
It seemed like
Everything
floating like phones.
Okay, so
Samsung.
that's, I'm just wondering, like, cause I thought the first school, cause you had that, yeah, you could go define your classes, and how hard that
But the thing is, you don't even need to find your classes. Like,
Yeah, you can do it for I was always worried to let the client library find their classes.
Yeah.
Because like only ever use their job
But they were
stuff.
playing it in their web browser, right?
I should so
That's probably
bad.
better
Can people just
because with all that
just give it all the data?
they can
They can just clear it on data.
Yeah, and especially with when you're using the JavaScript one, if you want to lock everything down, it's like by default, they'll first will let you query all the users. So there were like tons of first web apps that you could get their entire user database, just like going and opening.
And all the Facebook on tokens and everything.
I don't know if it would give you tokens, it was definitely giving email addresses for like, yeah, just the email authentication thing on there. And there was somebody figured out it was open by default, so they like scanned a bunch of these web apps and just harvested all these email addresses off of it. But
Yeah.
pretty crazy when that happened.
They're great. Yeah, they're the best.
I've seen it.
Firebase has
We're not getting good interstitials. We just started playing
like
there.
with parse, you can request like,
CPMs
well,
sometimes are better than
we
30.
need these pieces of information back. And then
But maybe that'll change.
with Firebase, you like, they'll like get you, they'll like send you notifications.
I really like the idea though.
Say like, change the new user gets added, tell them. So like the new message gets added to the messages table, tell them. And then if one
Yeah.
user adds a message, the other you.
That was a nice part of mediation, where they're at in that waterfall kind of. But, you know, you just make, it's kind of a tease because we wanted all of those dynamic data. That's the
Caroline gave me a
at
list of
this point.
things to make sure that I have.
But it's a start, right?
And parse.
At least have it set up in a way that you can change it on the fly without
I was
having
just about to, I literally had it.
Yeah, or do it via your own.
about to
Because
build an app.
you could do that too.
Yeah, you could just do a text file on a server somewhere.
Yeah. Roll your own mediation
Yeah.
service, right? Then sell it as a service.
So he's building new,
But it's the mediation, basically just
I don't know that I'm
being
that
the
talented.
backend that also to make a query and say, give me what's the best right now. Or it has more
Part of that equation
behind
is
it.
It's actually dumber than you would expect it to be. It's, hey, ad mob, should I display your ad right now? Or should I make a call to Facebook to display yours?
And how do you get updates on the latest average prices? Like I'm wondering, like could you create your own backup behind?
You actually-
and a backup behind and actually script the whole thing so that you can actually dynamically get better prices or update that.
So, you log into your like Facebook audience dashboard and you can see that log paid $2 per 1,000 impressions. So you can do that.
So currently you fill that in manually to that
Some ad networks media does, and they offer you that. And in fact, AdMob had a office the average is 24 hours automatically.
But so many different advertisements. I assume you guys are using a couple of the prop, like the best one out of all the ones that are being there. Is there a reason why you don't have 10 instead of just 3?
I couldn't get 10 to work every time. That's what it is. Once you add that many SDKs to your app, all the time start working.
a couple of new updates.
Because if you include the off boxes, they also mediate Facebook themselves. So they have the Facebook SDK bundle in them. And everything just links with each other. And it's a bit of a mess, right? The whole advertising industry is a mess. And that's the reason why like there's all these security concerns on the web and
There's the
everything.
one app that I have is mine is paid, the one that Matt and I have is also.
Why a lot of people hate that.
It's not really fraudulent. Maybe that's what they did. Everyone's like,
And
I
advertising
have
mediation,
for Apple TV.
yeah, I'm all new.
They probably knew that they were
I recognize, like this didn't exist. Serve an ad network like AdSense or back to whatever.
Yeah,
house
video
you
ads
want
would make sense, right?
So you're seeing like order of magnitude increase in your revenue stream from using mediation versus not using mediation at all?
I'm just curious, so if you have Firebase, should be something to learn now that ours
We're
is.
getting paid on a lot of lost.
Or should I still
Never
learn?
happened without those callbacks to ad.
You know, I wouldn't try to learn ours because it is
Yeah,
going away. But definitely.
It's been very.
What's your tagline on your meeting?
Yeah, advertising industry in general, right? Which is on my LinkedIn too.
You just give us the money and we'll take care of advertising, and there's no
You're gonna have
feedback.
to become an expert in
How effective
something.
it is.
So I'm trying to figure out how to.
Online, you should,
Well, that's
that's the reason you should be able to track.
Oh,
That's the YouTube thing.
But advertisers, networks still don't want that level of reporting. They still
There is
don't want,
rumor
you know,
that
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 sort of
stuff's
transparency.
changed.
And
But that's
advertisers
been
still don't
the
know that
11
they
years
can,
that my husband's been working.
they can ask for that sort of
So,
stuff, right? They're getting smarter and smarter, but they still don't know that, you know,
It focuses
you can
more
tell
on
me
like the
exactly,
real
you should be able to tell me
data
exactly
stuff,
what
which is really good
I'm
on like
spending my
chat.
money on and what I'm getting, what kind of value I'm getting.
So I mean, I think
It's
it
getting
would be
better and
good
better, but it's
to
still
learn.
not there. So
But,
like you say,
the really useful thing for a lot of people is
they don't want to be as accountable as they should be.
Yeah.
Data, so then there's less
the part that was like one of the core
padding,
things.
less marketing.
You like with
Alright, our CPM went up a lot yesterday.
shared.
What advertisement was it? Who was it? I want to know who it was. Like, who was it?
Part of it is that it's supposed to be private.
Well,
Right.
but you could put people in.
showing.
Maybe.
Ours really
Right.
spiked on draft games, I could tell. because they pay for a lot of
So,
video.
what you
That
could-
native unit can be
the way to
videos,
apply
but
that
it's
to your
very
app is
expensive.
with Parse would have been.
And we noticed I was
create
paying
a
our fees a lot.
contacts
That's
database
wrong.
in
Rob
Parse,
Gronkowski,
company
yeah,
for
the
database in
draft
Parse.
they were spending
And,
a lot of time.
and so whenever
like NFL
someone
kickoff
could give an invite to join a company
and then
on
spiked them so we could
that, then
guess those things, but
once
that's the
that
best
invite would like
it's
add
the
that
one
to
that
the
spiked
list
it
of
then.
Do you guys do anything, speaking of kind of mediation, do you guys do anything on your app?
However you want, and then you have another table that you
Like push notifications or anything like that, that would spur activity when you see, when you know that you're getting a push like that, or you're getting a parcel spike around you?
We do
That's
send out
something that-
notifications for content, and we actually just started doing it
like
a
with
lot
Rails,
more
for
recently.
example,
Like,
Rails
we
is
came up
like
with a good push
the full
notification
custom,
strategy.
write all the code
These
yourself
are the
that
pieces
you
of
can deploy
content
anywhere,
that broadcast to the world.
but that's
Targeted, but yeah, if
Ruby, which is a whole nother
I don't know, since they're targeted at an individual
Another thing that would
on
be cool
Facebook,
is that-
spiking your traffic a ton, it doesn't mean you're gonna get that, let's say you're getting a $5 CPM session. You're not gonna get that for every impression. That
Well, I'm just
was,
thinking if you have like a,
code that
if you do have a video campaign that pops up on your radar, you're like, oh, this is gonna be good, right?
Yeah.
You know, we should get,
drive more traffic.
we should
right?
drive more traffic to it, right? Try to get more impressions
Yeah.
during that time.
That is a good point.
They
Yeah,
they
if
have
you saw
the
one
network
nature
and
getting
everything
$20
that's on
CPM,
Facebook.
it's a good idea, I should tell her.
But they have
Set a
all the
notification, give more people an ad.
Well, one of the interesting
And they
things,
also have like some additional
so I started,
stuff.
Perk acquired Corona, so I started
I'm gonna
working downtown here at the Perk office, and
Okay.
one of the things that.
But basically, the whole
they-
idea is you
They
like,
make all their
you have like
apps,
your objects, your
they
index
have,
objects,
and
and
they have,
code, and you can,
you know, these relationships with
Yeah.
advertisers and stuff like that, and they do,
basically,
they do sort of mediation where
JSON,
the player
which is, you know, the.
plays
web
the
format,
game,
and you send it
watches
to
the
server,
video,
server saves
earns
them, and
points,
any of your
Once they get a certain
apps,
number of
instead of
points,
taking them
cash them in for
back,
gift cards or
download
what have you, right?
JSON parts of it back.
So one of the interesting things for me is to sit
And that's why
alongside the product managers, and
product
they're
parts,
really
pushing
watching
care of the whole parsing.
what people are doing, and
Yeah.
listening to feedback, and trying to figure out,
So at a high level, what have you
what
found
to
so
say or do
far
next in order to encourage behavior. And they see, and they really watch, you know.
So the difference
That's the rewards plan.
is,
Yeah, what the
like,
results are, yeah. The rewards.
And you're saying
I
that
mean,
there's,
there's like,
part of it is you show advertisement to earn a reward, right?
Right, you get a, yeah,
with
you
that
get
part,
a
they
per
have,
point. So you
they
get
have,
and then,
I think
you
they
can collect those
their
points.
free plan is more limited than the partial
Cash them in.
ones.
Once you get a certain
And,
number.
So
but
do
then
this
they
go
also
to
have,
like your
different
perk
options
account, or
for
do they go to like your
payment
account?
methods,
and
like
then-
fractal.
They have a,
Is that why Parse is
yeah,
closing down?
I'm kinda new to their
Because it-
system. They have
I
a
think
wallet.
Facebook just wants those
Probably
engineers.
per points in the wallet.
The people that worked
And
at
they have a
Parse
back-end system
were
that
like
keeps track of
really
everything.
smart and
Keeps track of all your points.
That was like
You
your
can
side
play, they have
project?
a bunch of different
no,
games
the,
you can play.
like a lot of the people that worked at Parse, they joined Parse.
That's really cool.
And they'll give you extra points, you know, if you sign
That's
up
right,
for
they got
Facebook
13 versions.
Oh, yeah, right.
They bought Parse
Yeah,
because they
all
bought,
these
you
different,
know, there's like 100,000
behavioral
iOS
aspects of
developers
things,
that
which is
use
interesting,
Parse.
I think.
And so
Because,
those people,
you know, as developers, we put ads in our app,
Facebook's product, and
push it out there, and we hope for the best, right? And then
tell people like, here's how,
and then
eventually use our ads in your app.
come try to talk like this and go, oh, mediation, like, yeah, that'd be a great idea, to be able to flip flop my ads based on,
Money, like that's their thing, so
you know,
that's
based on different networks and different.
going for, but I guess it didn't work
But
out.
then the idea, but now it's
And I
just the
guess
idea that,
you know, people would build apps in Parse, and
drive
people would build apps
behavior.
other stuff,
You're
and
angry,
they
you
would
wanna
just as
drive
well use Facebook
traffic, you
ads
wanna
in
drive
certain cases.
whatever,
I guess
so
they're like,
you- so
well,
not
it's
only
not
is
that,
it
it's
just
really
like
important to own Parse.
mediation, but it's also.
But they still had all
at that moment
these great
realize,
engineers
oh,
who
some
made
Ford's doing a big push.
startup, and
Now would be a good time
since then,
to,
they're all working.
people would be seeing ads, right?
Yeah.
I guess they
Do
want
something
more
in the app
to
to drive people to.
That's what I think.
the app.
They close this, so that, you know,
At the right
get rid of all that work.
Because otherwise, that big campaign goes by, you got a little bit of it, but you didn't get as much as you could have, because you
I
didn't.
think they're trying to do something that's competitive to Parse, but proprietary.
Flappy Bird, like offer a different bird character right during
I
that
suppose
period.
Parse
They
is-
all
Why would
do
they
it
just-
for
why would they
so
just-
long.
Yeah.
Daily challenge sort of thing.
They could have gotten at least 100 million for it.
Yeah,
Well, like I said, they really like
this
those
guy.
engineers that are working on it, they want to.
I guess no one would wanna buy
just
parts.
did,
One, like, if it was like, buy the company with no employees.
He won
That's
the
true.
big,
That's, I mean, most of the value, I
indie
guess,
pitch
yeah,
in
most of the
London.
value is,
And, the thing that he does in this.
because the software really isn't that.
Now that they're not doing cars, why are they gonna wanna stay there? Like, what are they gotta have something that they're enticing those people to stay there. Well, there is that, Facebook is doing well.
Yeah.
Jumping around and trying to get to that
Despite-
point, and then
That's a good point.
Despite all odds.
this is a great little thing. He actually asked what you thought, which I thought was like, right? Rather than trying to guess what people were doing, just.
You're on vacation.
We find something else we
But
need
then,
to do.
hello.
Okay.
You better pick one.
Oh, I got a big one. I got a big one. So, so one of the things that he does is,
Thanks for
yeah,
coming down.
one of the things that he does is, if you crack your character is kind of not usable anymore, but what you can do.
All right.
Big timing for me.
Until
Nice
next
seeing you
time.
again.
Nice to see you guys.
You get like in-game experience points for everything that you, every level that you complete, and then you can use
Your
those
new role.
to kind of customize that character, and you can have multiple characters. So if I wanted to, I could take those experience points, started a new character.
We just hired someone that does Android, but also.
Which I thought was really good because,
We did.
you know, it's one thing to kind of open up a game, play
Right now we
it, see
do,
some
we have,
have a definite beginning point and end point of the game, right? And they tell us this is done, right? I'm like, I'm not really invested in that game. I mean, I might like it, I might remember to come back and play it, but I don't have anything waiting
Well, I
for
was
me
just wondering,
back
I mean,
there, right?
before,
Here,
before, and I
you know,
didn't
I'm
really
collecting,
know
well, I'm
that
collecting
you
up
could
experience points, I've kind of customized my character.
object.
You know, I may have 2 or 3 characters. There's more of an investment now, where I've sort of psychologically
You know, I'm ready
myself
to
this
start
thing, and
my next contract, but
you know,
I'm
next
just
time I go
kinda
into
pushing
play
it
it
off,
off,
you know, not really actively looking.
it just seems like it was more of a
Yeah, so
connection
actually,
there,
Anthony
and it's
in charge
very
of
simple, I
hiring.
mean, just the concepts are very simple.
So I should go ahead and talk with them. Now,
So you also have something in the game
developers
that
actually work directly.
Right.
leverage.
Well, and then
No,
on top
so
of that, I mean,
the
he has a
developers
here, but on top of that,
really
you
work for
could-
the
you
project
could-
manager.
Experience.
My job is more like to,
Advertising.
like, pay attention to stuff and like figure out like, oh, like people keep.
The level of bonus.
Have a question, so I like figure out like, there's a.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Or,
So those types of
I'm
things, but I
kinda
thought
like.
just adding an in-game process into the
Where
nice
he-
idea. And
Making them,
it's just.
I'm not
It's more
really.
feeling than anything else. I recognize more feeling. Yeah, this was.
You could
Yeah,
I would fit well with
Single
you.
company, but you can then push all the different markets. But
Yeah,
is there
I
any
do.
work on it?
Yeah, we have
You've only
the
done a
experience.
project for iOS or Swift, say, you could look into doing reverse engineering to
Well, I'm kind
flags,
of
so
a
you can then
sensitive
distribute
person.
it to the other end.
So
So
sometimes I
like just point
see
it.
things that aren't necessary.
Now they've got a.
And so
tool for
I had
that,
a,
but-
you know, really good rapport.
But once you've developed it, you kind of got logic down, you know, all the different pieces and
Then I think there was some concern as far as when Amy.
It's been a year and a half since I played the Cron. I really liked it. Lua is one of my favorite languages.
Because I was asking about the
Biggest problem I have for
right?
designing
And then I kind of backed
game
off on that.
is
I
I
think
couldn't find it. Maybe I'll change the
conversation gave to me, and I think Anthony's kind of been
auto layout, auto functionality. You're dealing with all the different
concerned about me.
dimensions of
So I've been kind of wondering, you know,
Yeah.
that's why.
Is there anything been done?
Because
in that
JoJo.
regard?
We-
Contact, right?
not from a non-use perspective.
Yeah.
The one great
nothing
thing.
that I heard.
One,
Okay.
terrible thing, I guess you can say.
Well, I
is
guess
that
I'll,
It's like a
give
Swiss Army
Anthony a
knife
call.
of the things, you can make it do anything, you can create anything
Right.
you want out of it.
Y'all are right
But
there
that
on
kind of
Sixth Street.
flexibility is almost
Yeah.
white
that was
paper
good.
syndrome,
Hopefully,
right, where you
yeah, like
don't
right
know
now,
where to
we
start.
don't have any
Something like that, so
big
if
project to start.
design is not your
I
thing,
don't know exactly
you know,
what
then
would be next, 'cause I know sometime
it
this
could be
year
a little
we'll have another
intimidating,
big project.
but
Excellent.
Hi.
Hi, are you the?
Design is not my
Organizer,
thing, I'm
yeah.
referring more to.
Yeah, right, the
Nice to meet you,
Just,
first
just
time.
all the sizing and
So,
all the
cool.
spacing and all that kind of stuff.
You're gonna be for
Yeah, you can wanna reinvent a lot of layout, I tried that, and it's a lot of work.
Right, right,
Yeah,
and, yeah, exactly, no, you still have to, working that out on your own. We do have,
What is
we're
your,
working on, we have a
well,
thing
I
called,
want to-
Composer GUI,
Well, I'm gonna do
which
two
is sort of a drag and drop tool, but it's still not really non-game related. And then behind the scenes,
About, like,
very, still,
or like,
at the spec level, we're working on an
So from enterprise, can I invoke native controls?
Yeah.
Experience on the ads.
Yeah.
So that's what we're driving on now. I was wondering what level of impressions per day would you think you need to start getting worthwhile income to actually bother putting ads in? As opposed to making it a paid app and you have ads
Yeah,
in there,
that's
and
a-
in-app purchase to remove the ads, you know, and all that.
Yeah, that's a tough call. That I don't know. The answer for everybody is probably different depending on what kind of income you need to be a sustainable business. But if nobody's trying your app to begin with, say it's $2 up front, paid app, like nobody's downloading it, it's kind of a chicken before the egg situation. Our apps, it made sense because we already had an audience on our website. It was like, hey, download our app, you'll get our content, it's right in your thumb on your phone. Push notifications. And the website drives traffic to the app, which people are okay with advertisements being there anyway, and they weren't willing to spend $2 up front, so that made sense, and those games did too. And that, like,
Especially if they're sitting
how
there
would
looking at the screen for a long time, you get more and more refreshes on the impressions.
Oh yes, the 2048
Yeah,
phone that we
yeah,
made.
and so he just felt
People
like
would play that at an average of like 15 minutes a session because it survived a long time. If we refresh it every 30 seconds, so if they were really good at it, the last 45 minutes, we just served that did really well for a while.
Yeah, into it, and he just found out.
If we'd have known more at that launch too, that would have been
Oh, really? Yeah.
So what kind of eCPM do you see?
I don't know. He's like a laser.
On a good day, on the
Anyway, this app is.
I found I very variable, because some days I'm getting 40 cents, and then another day it's $1.50.
the Facebook banners on iOS will be anywhere from
Oh, that's it.
in that